everybody. Today I'm going to talk about the Hoover Junior. This is an original Hoover Junior, model 1334. It was first produced in 1958 and they made them until about 1962 when they changed it to 1334A. You can tell this is an early one because it's got the original bag flange type fit in here. Also by the serial number. It's a metal body, aluminium body, which makes it fairly light, but it's a lot heavier than the plastic ones. It's far superior in my opinion to the later plastic models. This one isn't original. Originally it would have been a creamy white with rose coloured or pink fittings. The furniture guard would have been pink and the cover cap would have been pink, but this is one that's been reconditioned in the past. You can tell that by the fact that the serial number rating plate has been painted over when it was sprayed. Anyway, I'll just switch it on and you can see it sounds a bit harsh. It works, but it is a bit harsh in running. The bearings in the motor are probably dry because it hasn't been done for many years. This is actually my daughter. She's just brought it over today and asked me to give it a service for her. So I thought I'd take the opportunity of showing people how to dismantle it, take the motor apart, because they can be quite fiddly if you're not used to it. So we'll make a start on it. The first thing to do is obviously to check it, to see roughly what's wrong, check the various items. The first one to check is, let's get it so you can see a bit better. I'll just move the camera in there so you can see this bit. Take the front cover plate off and take the belt off. Obviously you can check the belt later before you do put it back together again. But you see the motor pulley here, or the fan pulley as it's called. If you lift that fan pulley up and down, any play up and down, that indicates that the back bearing, the sleeve, phosphor bronze sleeve bearing is worn in the motor. End play, in and out, that indicates a worn motor bearing. You can also tell a worn motor bearing by spinning it. This one doesn't feel too bad. It is a little harsh and it probably doesn't need replacing. It needs greasing properly with a proper grease gun, so the motor will have to come apart for that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you how to take it all apart and overhaul the motor. Right, first thing to do is to take the bag off completely. Just undo this screw here, which has lost its thread, so it's going to be awkward to get off. That's typical when you're trying to show something, it goes wrong. The thread's actually gone in the bag flange. Oh, I've not got it now. Just undo that screw, and that clips off at the back there. It's full of rubbish in there. Unhook the bag, the spring off the top of the bag, and put the bag aside out the way. You don't need that for a while. Just chuck that bit of rubbish away. The next thing to do is to remove the screw in the little lever that holds the handle up. So you need a Phillips type screwdriver or a POS drive screwdriver to remove that screw. And take that as the little bracket. There's a single little screw that holds that on there to operate the handle lever. I'll put that aside. The other screw you've got to undo is this one here that holds the handle into the handle socket. Take this little bolt out. This is a special nut and bolt made specially for Hoovers. It doesn't fit anything else. There we go. You see it's a special little screw and a special bolt. But that needs to come out because you've got to take the handle part out of the handle socket. Note the insulating sleeve there because it's a doubly insulated machine, so you've got an insulating rubber sleeve there to isolate the metal. Okay, having done that, obviously take the front cover plate off. Then you can take the machine. What I normally do is I hook it over the side of the bench like this so you can work on it, but I might move it around at various times so you can see what I'm doing. Now you don't have to take the wheels off, but if you're going to give it a good clean out, it doesn't hurt. Now one thing to point out, when you're servicing the machine, one of the important things to do is make sure you oil the wheels, because if you listen to this, they're horrible and noisy. Now if you just get a can of oil and just listen to the difference, sometimes it makes a frightful noise. Just a tiny drop of oil on the axle shaft. These are Bakelite wheels, not the cheap plastic things. A little bit of oil before, after, no noise, and it can make a hell of a difference when a customer is using the machine. Just that little tiny drop of oil makes them think you've done a good job whether you have or not. Right, taking this plate off to remove the front wheels. You don't have to do this, as I say, but it's only 2 screws and you can give it a good clean out properly if you do that. So just whip those out. Take that one off and the whole wheel housing will come off then. My hands are too big for these fiddly little screws. There's one gone in there, I'll get that in a minute. Take the belt off the front, I've already done that, and then pull the agitator out. Usually you can do it just by pulling on the belt like that. Take the agitator out, put it aside, because you can do that one. We'll cover that later on. Okay. Next thing is take the bottom cover plate off, obviously. 2 little screws. Again, they're Phillips type or POS drive type. And that will take the bottom plate off and reveal the connections. Before you touch anything, make absolutely certain that you haven't got it still plugged in, because at this stage you will get an electric shock. Interesting thing about the bottom cover plate, note there's a little pad on here. This doesn't look like the original Hoover one, it's been adapted, but it's a bit of foam somebody stuck on. On the early models they didn't have that. That cover just went on there, and what used to happen is the machine would get pins and things and they'd get stuck in this terminal block and short across and blow the fuse. So Hoover introduced a little pad. Usually had a little plastic cover on the foam. It stuck on there and it pressed down over there to stop things getting into there to short them out. The other use for that we used to do is put that near you and use it as a little tray for the parts when you're servicing it. But I've got a little pot now, but I might put the motor parts in there, so I'll keep that handy. Right, now then, we've got to get the motor out. You don't need to take all this out. You can take the back wheels out if you want, because it, I don't know if you can see that. I'll have to get a bit closer. I've got the handle stuck with my leg now. Press that down. If you want, you can take this off. There's just 2 screws there. The same applies with those wheels. Noisy. Again, if I put a tiny drop of oil, you do this afterwards normally. See the difference? Noisy, oiled, it's not so bad. If you want to take this off, you can take those 2 screws out. If you take all 4 out, you can withdraw the handle socket. For what I'm doing, I don't need to take any of that off. To get the motor out on this particular model, all you need to do is, first of all, remove the 2 screws to hold the switch on. There's one Phillips screw down there. When you do this, be careful because there's a spring underneath that might play it. You don't want to lose it. This is the early push type switch. There's the spring, look, like that little spring. It's just a push on, push off switch. And then you've got a little switch lever. There's the switch lever that operates it. The spring goes in there just to return it, and then it just presses that switch. The later models had a different sort of switch, wasn't as good as this, with a little plastic button on that popped up. These are much better, this type of switch. Anyway, put those parts in your little pot, don't lose them. You don't need to take all these wires off. The only wires you need to remove now are the 2 mains wires. Again, that you must make sure it's unplugged before you do this, otherwise you get a nasty surprise. Just undo those 2 screws there. Okay, 2 screws there, and just pull that out of the motor. Leave all the other wires and screws connected at the moment. Then you need to take out the 4 screws. Now, I hope you can see this. It's a bit tricky to show this on the camera, but basically there's 2 there, and there are 2 right down in the bottom, and they're the difficult ones to get out. The 2 top ones are easy. So, just take these out. One there, and one there. Okay, now there's one right down in the corner there, and to get to that you have to go down through the handle there. If you, as I said, you can do it like this. I've got it under. If you're struggling, it sometimes does help to take the handle socket off. I might have to in this one because it's a bit tight and I can't think I can get to it. It is coming out gradually, but the screw's a bit tight. They are fiddly, these, to get out. Well, I've got that one loose. Now the other screw, I'm going to have to put it where you can see it. It's very tricky trying to keep it in the camera, especially if you've got the thing upside down effectively. There's a screw right down in the bottom, down in here, and the only way to get to it is you need a special long screwdriver. Now this is a proper Hoover screwdriver, it's got a really long shaft. An average screwdriver only comes to about that length, and it's not long enough to reach down in there. So you do need a long Phillips or pos drive screwdriver, and that is actually an official Hoover made. Well, it's made by Stanley, but it was made for Hoover from Hoover themselves. And to get to that screw there, what you've got to do, I'm just going to put it down. You might be able to see this. Move the furniture guard back a bit like that, and you'll see there's a little slot in the casting, and that slot is where you put the screwdriver down behind the wire and right down into the corner, and there it locates in that last screw in the corner. But you've got to push the furniture guard back to get at it. Undo that screw, and now the motor should be free. The screws are still in it, so I'm just going to try and pull that out. There we go. And that's it. That's the motor out now. You can put the body work aside now. You notice the handle and everything's still attached. You don't need to touch that for a moment. We'll put that aside, take it off the bench. Make sure you retrieve the little screws out of the motor. There's 4 of those. There's 2 short ones and 2 long ones. Make sure you put the right ones in, otherwise you'll have a job doing it. Right, there's the motor itself.